Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time. We are going to be using Halloween circles from Pretty Pink Posh for today's video. I actually, when I ordered these, I ordered the Valentine's circle dies because I liked how those looked better than the ones that came out when the Halloween circles came out. And I did check with, or actually Paulina just replied to my story where I said, I hope these fit. And she said she did that on purpose, so they do fit. So that's good. And so I cut out 3 of those in orange. And then I just have our cardstock we're going to stamp on. And then I have just a card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I cut a piece of black cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I ran that through this die that I've had forever from Lil Inker Designs that just puts like cross hatches in it. It doesn't do any cutting. It just kind of cuts into the paper, if that makes sense. So I am going to run my tape runner along the card base. I've been cutting my panels for a while now, but the panels I'm putting down onto my card base because the card base isn't perfect. So I measure the panel, like this black one here, a little bit bigger. So a little tiny bit more than 4 1/4 and a tiny bit more than 5 1/2 so that I know it'll cover the whole card base and none of the white will be peeking out, just to be safe. So there is the card base. You can see it has some excess, but it does cover it, so that's good. And then this is kind of the layout that I'm going for. So those will stick down later. We're going to stamp our Halloween circles first and get those colored in and cut out. I didn't mention today is, obviously it's in the title of the video, day 11 of a video every day in October. I am doing pretty good so far. My goal is to have them up kind of pre-scheduled for the morning, but that hasn't always been the case so far, but they are up every day at some point. So I'm hoping to get back on a schedule. I just got a little bit busy. So you can try to guess the 3 that I'm going to be putting on the card. I end up stamping 4 of them. The 3 I'm going to be putting on the card are the 3 that I've put down. So the pumpkins and then the bats in the sky and the candy. But I'm going to stamp the cat one, just stamp it while I'm here. I didn't want to fill up with all 6 of them, but I will stamp these 4 and I'll save the cat for next time. So then I place those and then pick them up in the window, but then my paper moves, so then I have to readjust that. I'm going to link this pressure pal down below that I use for stamping in my platform because it is very helpful. It not only takes the pressure off of having to like use your hands or something else to press on the window, but it also gives an even pressure so that you get kind of a crisper image. And you're not pushing and squishing ink into areas it doesn't belong with your fingers. I still am usually doing a second inking. That's just the nature of, first of all, I'm using new stamps, but the amount of ink a stamp can hold. So I'm going to go in a second time since my paper stays in place. And that is usually a good image. So I'm going to take a quick break while I clean those stamps off. And then we will zoom in here so that we can color. But first, what I've been trying, because the alcohol markers have been kind of bleeding the black ink, and I want to avoid that. So I've been drying in the kind of like the pumpkins there, for example, I pointed them out because they have lines that it's kind of hard to color around. And I don't want to have the ink bleed. So what I've been doing is just drying it with a heat gun until the paper curls up. You can dry it for as long as you want. It's not embossing powder, so you're not like melting it and then melting it too much. So you're like burning it. It's just paper. So I dry it until it curls and then I flip it over and then I dry that side until it's flat again. And that should usually work out. So I'm going to be only coloring in the bats, the pumpkins, and then the candy. I'll put the cat away for next time. So I grabbed my blue turquoise tri-blend, and I'm going to just kind of follow follow the road here on the candy and do the 3-color blend. I really like the turquoise teal combos in the tri-blends. They have some really good ones. And this is kind of the bluer one, blue turquoise, obviously. So I will blend that out. And then the purple combo, I've actually been reaching for the lavender more often over the purple blend. I really like the purple blend, but I don't use the lavender one enough. So I'm going to use that and blend the 3 colors in this tiny, tiny area as best I can. And then we have candy corn, and I always forget. I will never remember what color order. I only know white is on top, but I'll never remember the color order of candy corn. So it's good that I made this like Halloween pocket letter thing in one of those baseball card sheet protectors, and it's up on my wall all year round, and it happens to have candy corn on it, so I can look up at that and not have to like ask my husband to look up the order of candy corn because I'm filming with my phone. So I'm just going to I used YR07 for the orange, and then I'm going to use the Y08 for the yellow. That is how I've labeled my Copic Chow markers, because their lid doesn't have the color number on it. I'll be using RV25 just for the stem of the lollipop there. I did a punched out, I used like an address, like sticky, like an address sticker sheet that you put through a printer. And the excess space, I used my hole punch, and I punched out a bunch of those, separated them with my fingernail, put the sticker on the lid, and then I wrote the number. So there was one day I was like Instagram FaceTiming with a crafty friend, and that's what I did the whole time. And I got all my markers labeled. So it's very nice because they're in front of me, so it's nice to kind of look and actually see the numbers I'm looking for based on my chart. And it helps me reach for them more often. Not as often as I should be, but more often. I'm using the orange blend. I think it's just called orange. I can't remember. On the pumpkins, and I am avoiding the lines just in case. I don't want to smear. The heat gun doesn't do a perfect job. I'm sure it helps dry it a little bit, but I'm still going to avoid the coloring over the lines if I can help it so they don't smear. So I am just being very careful. Just kind of coloring vertically in between the black marks on the pumpkin, basically. And then on the lightest blend, doing the same thing. And avoiding the edges of the eyes as well. I eventually fill those in with yellow, just the Y08 marker. Again, the Copic. If anyone has any tips other than letting your stamped images sit out for a couple days before coloring them, I realize that's an option. I just hate to take away the stamping portion of these videos. I can do that and maybe stamp out images I plan on using for these videos a couple days in advance, or at least a day in advance, and let them sit out and dry. The heat gun, I could probably hold the heat gun on it longer. I might test that off camera just because it would take a long time on camera. So maybe I'll try the heat gun a little bit longer. Do my trick twice where I let the paper curl up and then flip it over and let it go flat again. I could do that a couple times. I'm not trying to light the paper on fire either. So I'm just going to color in the pumpkins where the candlelight would be shining through with the yellow, trying to avoid the black lines, which is very easy to do with alcohol markers. I've said before, the alcohol marker ink will find its way into the corners. You don't have to completely blend over or into the lines. you can color without touching the black lines just fine. But if you have any tips other than drying it with a heat gun or leaving your images out, let me know. I am using the My Favorite Things hybrid black. I don't know if it's called licorice. No, it's not licorice. My Favorite Things hybrid. I think it has a name. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I'm setting that Copic aside because I got marker on the lid and I'm going to clean it in a second. So you're going to get a sneak peek into how I clean my Copic markers. It's very brief. If you have a better ink that you prefer that I have not tried, I've tried Memento Tuxedo Black. That's what everybody's done. And then Lawn Fawn. The Lawn Fawn and the My Favorite Things work with watercolor though as well. And I would prefer an ink that works with both, but one that doesn't bleed after I stamp an image twice. Any suggestions I will take down below. So for this bat, I only went dark on his wings. I didn't want his face to drown out because he has little eyes and a smile in there. So I only used the lightest shade on his face so that his face would not disappear. So for my marker, I use alcohol swabs. So I'm just going to wipe off the lid where I got the marker. And then I'll show you on the inside. This is how I clean the marker base. And then in here, I take tweezers. Some of it might be off camera. I'm so sorry, but I was just cleaning the lid. I wasn't doing a tutorial here. I pinch the alcohol swab in my tweezers and then shove that down into the lid to clean the inside of the lid out. And then just toss the alcohol swab. So I kind of do that as I go. I don't have sit-down sessions where I clean all my Copic markers. I also don't use them often enough to have them get that messy. I really should, but I don't. I'm using Y17 with the Y08 for the moon. I wanted to give it more of an orangey glow. So for the moon and the bigger star, I'll do a blend between kind of the light yellowy orange and the yellow. Very carefully trying to make sure I don't bleed any of the black ink. And then I got out a little bit on the moon, so I'm just using the Copic Zero Marker Colorless Blender to clean that up, which works wonderfully. I'm going to leave the cat coloring in for another time, but I will put him in with the stamp set so that I have that. That has saved me so much time just here and there when I stamp extra. I just put it back in with the stamp set. It's almost always Copic friendly ink on the cardstock I use all the time. And so it saved me earlier. I needed a sun for a card I was making, like a sun in the sky, yellow sun. And the Lawn Fawn Space stamp set has the bigger sun, and I had one already stamped, so I didn't have to stamp it. It was very lovely. So, tuck that little cat in there for next time. And then I'm going to show you cutting these out just so you can see how I cut things out. This is the Sizzix Sidekick. I think Altenew has one of these machines. I also have full stick Post-it pads, which is what I use to hold down the dies. The whole back of the Post-it is sticky except for the little tab where you peel up the edge. And that is like the perfect tackiness as a Post-it, but it also gives you more coverage because it's got sticky all over the backside. I believe there are a few other companies. Altenew has a little die cut machine like this. It's just so handy when I don't want to walk over to my giant one that's on top of my cart when you don't need something except for something this small. So it comes in handy and it sections down to the table. I think Stampin' Up! Has a mini one, although I think I might have heard somebody that didn't like it. I'm not sure. I would just watch some reviews on YouTube. I'm sure there's a video on YouTube somewhere about which mini die cutter is the best. I think I'll even search one and I'll put it down below for you. If I find one, I will put a link down below so that you can watch that for your own reference. But this one has been working fine for me. And I have a couple packs of replacement plates as backup as well, because they're very cheap wherever I found them. I think it might have been scrapbookpal.com. So I'm going to set that aside, and that Post-it will last me a few more go-rounds, so I leave that on the die cutter machine. And then I'll set aside our stamp set, and we can put together our card. There isn't going to be a sentiment on the front, and at the end I kind of waffle between looking for a sentiment because the stamp set doesn't have any sentiments. It's just the circles, which is fine. But I didn't bother to go look through my stash for a Halloween sentiment to use. But I would put a sentiment on the inside of the card and then just let the outside be the images without a sentiment. That's fine. So I'm using some like foam dimensionals that I have to lift these up. I'm just going to eyeball the upper left corner, and then I'm going to put foam dimensionals on the other two and peel off the backing so I don't waste your time and make you watch that. I'm going to eyeball that one in the bottom left corner, and then I can evenly eyeball the one that's going to go in the right middle area. So not scientific, just helpful. And then I decided this is the order I wanted them in. So I'm going to glue these down. I could have just used my tape runner. The back side of these is big enough that it would have been easy, but I decided to use my art glitter glue since this one was behaving and actually not clogged. I did go into my stash of art glitter glues because I have like 6 of these from doing card classes, and the ones that have been sitting in my like storage shelves for a while are probably better behaved than the one that I'm using that's constantly clogging. So there's that. So I will stick down the bats. And also the glue gives me a little wiggle room if I stick it down and it's not quite centered. I was able to do that with the pumpkins. They were a little off center, so I got to wiggle them around a bit. So liquid glue does give you that wiggle room, but you don't have too much, because if you have to move it far, then you've got glue on your surface, and visible glue, like if you move it too far to the right, for example. But this worked out fine. So what I'm going to do is I finally found my glossy accents. I had put them in the middle of my new carousel, so I couldn't find them in yesterday's video because I forgot where I put them. But I am going to add some glossy accents to just give some interest to this card. This doesn't end up working. I can never seem to unplug one of these. And so I'm just going to switch to the other one, because I think when I push the glue clog, I feel like I'm doing it properly, but I push the glue clog and then it just finds its way back to the opening and it clogs itself again. So this is the one that has worked before and has been open. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So you have a couple options when you use the glossy accents. You can kind of guide the glue. This is just going to dry clear and shiny, by the way, if you haven't used this before. And I used to use it as glue, but now I have the art glitter glue, and now I just use it for accenting and making things look clear and shiny. Things like bubbles and stuff that should be shiny, but also stuff like this. You can use the tip of the glue to guide it, but these also have kind of really small crevices. So what you could do is you could use the pin or a pin from another glue and put some glue in the middle of what you're doing, and then use the pin to guide it to the corners a little more precisely. One of my pumpkin eyes, I definitely went outside the lines with the glue, which is fine. This here, for example, the circle on the sucker is much easier than like the pumpkin faces. So if you want to put a blob on there and then use a pin to guide it around, kind of like people who decorate cookies do with the cookie icing, if you've ever seen that. Anyway, just a tip, but I didn't need to be that precise. So it worked out fine. So this is going to be me contemplating putting a sentiment inside and then not thinking of what set I would get that from. So I will just end this here. And here's our card for day 11. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow for day 12. Thanks for watching. Bye.